A nurse who broke the bones of newborn baby gets more charges. This was a hell of a story. Put it up full mass. It's quite unbelievable, but it happened according to the allegation. We have an update. The Virginia NICU nurse broke the bones, of newborn, is facing more charges. I'm going to give you a read down of the charges, but first, reminder that in January, we reported this to you. Virginia Henrico officer had arrested a hospital nurse, NICU nurse. Her name is Erin Strotman. Nurse Strotman was charged with felony counts of malicious wounding and abuse of a child causing serious injury. This nurse was taken into custody. This came 1 week after the hospital announced it was temporarily stopping admissions to the neonatal intensive care unit after 3 babies were found to have unexplained fractures. This was in 2023. Now, charges were first announced against the 26-year-old nurse, nurse Erin Elizabeth Anne Strotman in January, stemming from a disturbing case in which multiple babies were found with unexplained fractures in the unit of Henrico Doctors Hospital in Richmond, Virginia. Nurse Strotman was initially charged with malicious wounding, child abuse, and neglect in connection with a 5-month-old boy whose bones were broken on November 2024. A criminal complaint cited surveillance footage that reportedly showed Strotman taking the infant by his leg and pushing the child's legs to the point his feet reached his head. I know that's gruesome. There's more. Gradually, as more evidence emerged, the case against her grew, and prosecutors ended up filing 20 child abuse-related charges against her for the injuries she allegedly inflicted for 9 babies in total. That's according to WWBT. I want you to think about that number. 9. Prosecutors have to go back and investigate. Well, how do they investigate? Well, at this point, you have to investigate by way of testimony from parents, testimony perhaps from doctors and nurses, and testimony based on what was part of the written record back during that time. Which also means that more than likely you had complaints happening in real time that my child, my baby has had this issue and that issue. I wonder how many parents were blamed for the abuse of this nurse. There's more. Hospital administrators, they did launch an internal investigation. This took place November in 2024. This was after 3 babies were found with unexplainable fractures. The hospital said the discovery resembled an incident in 2023 when 4 babies were also found with fractures. The numbers are adding. The Henrico Doctors Hospital placed the nurse on paid administrative leave for a year following the incident in 2023. But she was allowed to return to the hospital in late 2024. What? They placed the nurse on leave, paid her for a go-home vacation under inquiry that she perhaps was abusing children. The hospital's policy dictates that all suspected cases of child abuse are to be reported within 24 hours of discovery. However, Virginia Department of Health officials stated that they were not notified about the 2023 incidents until weeks after they happen. Between August 5th and September 5th, 2023, 4 premature babies were found with unexplained fractures, but VDH, or social services, they were not notified until September 20th. The agency also learned that the hospital violated other policies after the staff reported they could not identify all personnel members who came into contact with each patient or collected lab results, another violation that the hospital engaged in. As the criminal case against Nurse Strotman developed, the Virginia Board of Nursing suspended her nursing license, concluded that, quote, a substantial danger to public health and safety warranted the decision. State records show that Nurse Strotman was issued her license in May 2019. She began working at that hospital that same year. Her license was suspended in May 2025. This is a sad story because babies, the most innocent of life, they are involved as victims coming straight into this world. Victims already. The hospital, they violated multiple policies, including the policy that said we need to know everybody who has contact with patients and every nurse who does lab work. That is simple. That is common. I sit on the board of directors for a hospital in Atlanta. That is industry standard. There is absolutely nothing extreme about that policy because when something does go wrong, you only have a few people who had contact with that patient, with that baby, or who did a lab. And you know everybody who's in the chain of custody for that. But when you don't follow those protocols, all of a sudden, you have to depend on guessing. Well, they had the right person. They sent her home. They suspended her for a year. But here's why they let her back, I believe. Because they couldn't prove it. Why couldn't they prove it? Because they had too many individuals who could not be accounted for, who had access to the patient, to the baby, and to the labs. Because they decided not to follow protocol. Why did it take them so long to report it? Because they knew they messed up. That is my opinion. It's very sad that this happened. Obviously, Nurse Strotman, this individual is extreme and evil in what they have done or attempted to do. And I believe that there are more babies who have likely been victimized that they're not counting. All right, dear brother, thoughts here?
We stack these stories back to back. I don't know how anyone can have faith in our institutions after this point. The institutions are completely asleep at the wheel, be it, sheriff's office or a hospital. These things that were supposed to and are designed to protect us, to keep us from dying, to benefit us, are doing the exact opposite. They're the institutions by which we are becoming victims. The last time I was on this show, we covered the story about the young lady, I believe it was in Ohio or Indiana, was forced out of the hospital while she was in labor, had to deliver her baby in the parking lot. So it's constant failure after failure after failure after failure of these institutions. I mean, America is the richest country on the face of the earth, the most developed nation on the face of the earth. We are above these things. Why are we comfortable with living in a third world country that we have allowed our system to devolve into? Where are the investigators? Where are the institutions that are supposed to be investigating these things? I recognize you said you were on the board. These protocols are not rocket science. It's not the 60s and 70s. We've already had incidences of nurses and doctors abusing patients and babies getting stolen for decades and decades and decades. And the system has evolved. It's supposed to have evolved. There's supposed to be protocols for these things to go according to design so that these things are not allowed to happen. Yet we see them happening time and time and time and time and time again. I don't know if there's a racial component of the story, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a terrible thing. Like you said, this woman is an evil person to abuse the most vulnerable beings on the face of the earth, infants. And I wonder how many parents, like you said, were investigated. I work in a family court. Nobody's life and death is under my control directly, but I still have umpteen different protocols I have to abide by, regulation I have to abide by, mandatory report. I have to do all those things or I'll be fired. There's somebody that's checking up after me to make sure I'm doing my job. and nobody's life will be on the line if I don't. Yet this woman, who is directly responsible for the lives of infants, is allowed to just abuse them unabatedly. It's tragic.
Yeah. I hope that a class action lawsuit is at least being discussed and is launched against this hospital. It definitely calls for one. All right, we'll bring you updates as they come.